Alrighty, it's 1 minute after 4 o'clock, so I think we will get started because we have a number of things to cover, and I know everybody's time is valuable. So good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for being here at our orientation, and further, thank you for your judging at one of the many district fairs that we're going to be conducting starting next week. My name is Cynthia Smith. I teach at Honolulu Community College, but I'm also one of the judge coordinators. There are 8 of us that are judge coordinators that help to run the various fairs. You're all here because you were told about this by the judge coordinator that is running your fair. So I'm representing all of those folks in this orientation. The judge coordinators, just to be clear, we basically step in and help right before the fairs, during the fairs, and after with the judges. Our primary responsibility is to help find judges, recruit judges, do the orientation, assign judges in terms of putting together the judge teams, and then helping you every step of the way should you have questions or need clarification, or even just want to consult with us as you're making your decisions. So please make use of your judge coordinator throughout this process, your point person for the fair that you're working. But we just come in and help on the fun parts with the fairs and dealing with the judges. But the real year-round heavy lifting is done by the Hawaii Council for the Humanities. They do all of the work in terms of organizing, structuring, websites, working with teachers and students, etc. We do have 3 representatives of Hawaii Council for the Humanities here today with us on the Zoom. So if any questions come up that they can answer best, they will be jumping in. We have Shannon Cristobal, many of you know her, is the director of History Day program. We have Devin Makizuru, who is assistant coordinator for History Day. And we have Dory Lange, who many of you have met through the years if you've worked with History Day, who started as a History Day teacher and then has moved into helping to run these fairs year after year. So that's the folks that are on this Zoom call, and we are here to help prepare you for the upcoming district fairs. This is the orientation that usually would happen on a Saturday morning. Those of you who have judged before, on Saturday morning, you would show up bleary-eyed with your coffee and we would go over this orientation. But we're doing it, of course, the week before to give people time to give people lots of different times to show up for the orientation on Zoom and to address any questions folks have before we begin judging next week. We're going to go over the traditional items that we always cover in an orientation. Judging criteria, what to look for in the projects. And then we have obviously some new stuff to cover because this is a virtual fair. We did one virtual fair at Leeward last year. As the pandemic kicked in, and we did a state virtual fair. This is our first time doing all of the districts as virtual fairs. So we'll go over some of those logistics today as well. It's going to be me talking, and then also we're going to cut to some video clips. These are the taped orientation materials that you've probably been directed to by your judge coordinator that's posted up on the judge resource page. Some people may have viewed it, so you've already seen this, but it bears repeating. Others may not have. So there's a couple that we want to make sure you viewed, and then we can answer any questions that relate to those. So we're going to intersperse me talking with a couple of these videos. Throughout this orientation, if you have questions, please type them in the chat room. Shannon, Devin, and Dory will be monitoring that and try to answer as many questions as possible. If you have something you really want to talk about and ask in person, if you can hold that till the end after we get through everything we need to, then the folks that need to leave can go and we can go over your questions. We'll stick around as long as people want to once the presentation's over. So, but certainly use the chat room throughout this session. Okay, so that's how it's going to work. Today's topics, just really quickly, we're going to talk about what is History Day, give the background, especially for our new judges, and welcome to our new judges. Go over the History Day theme for this year, virtual fair logistics and the timeline, go over your judging duties, take a break for a little bit of community building, and then back to nuts and bolts, talking about judging criteria and using the portal, the National History Day portal. So that's our plan for today. Our first item of business is to, whoops, back one, yeah, great, is to talk about what is History Day. First, before we look at that video though, do take note of the Judges Resources page. Again, you've been given this link in communication by your judge coordinator. But if you haven't had a chance, please look that over. This is years in the making of useful information for judges. A lot of information is there that will help you, especially if you are new to judging. But we'll start by watching this introductory video, which just gives some background of History Day and the kind of categories and divisions that you will be judging starting next week. So we'll go to that, and then we'll come back to me. Hello, welcome. This is the orientation video for those who will be judging for Hawaii State History Day fairs. My name is Cynthia Smith, and I am one of the historian consultants and one of the judge coordinators. The purpose of this video is to go over the expectations and the duties of the judges so that you have a little bit of a preview before you come on the day of the fair. All of the information I'm going to be talking about, we will again go over on the orientation that takes place prior to the fair, but this gives you a chance to think ahead, plan ahead, and come in knowing what is expected of you as a judge. Little background about Hawaii History Day. This is a project that began in the early 1990s. It is a major project of the Hawaii Council for the Humanities. They have been for almost 30 years helping support teachers and students across the state to prepare for History Day fairs. That support has included numerous workshops, a lot of resources posted on the web, and getting historians into the classroom to help consult with teachers and with students. The idea of the Hawaii History Day Fair is to conduct fairs that give students a chance to show the work that they've been doing throughout the year and to select those who are going to represent us at the National History Day Fair. You are judging either a district fair or a state fair, so let me explain the process. In essence, students begin working on their History Day projects in the early fall. They then present their projects often at school fairs, where they pick those who are going to represent the schools. From the school fairs, the best go to the district fairs, and the winners at the district fairs then go to the state fair in April. Those who win or qualify at the state fair, then HCH sends on to the national fair in Maryland. All of this involves a tremendous amount of work and logistical effort by Hawaii Council for the Humanities. And again, this is really a pet project of that institution. Now, on the days of the fairs, your job is a crucial job. There's a lot of work that goes into these History Day projects by the students, by the teachers, by their families, by Hawaii Council for the Humanities, but the critical person is you as the judge, because you are the person that is looking at giving feedback and evaluating those projects. You're the person the students have been thinking about all year. What will the judge be looking for? So your job is essential, and we want to make sure that you feel well prepared for doing that job. On the day of the fair, there's basically going to be 5 formats that will be judged, that will be evaluated, and the winners will be announced. Those 5 formats are, first of all, essay, which everyone should be familiar with, a traditional essay. We also have a relatively new format, which is websites. That is a very popular one with students. For essays and websites, this is how students present their historical research, present their historical arguments. For both essays and websites, if you are chosen, if you volunteer to do essays and webs, you will be judging before the fair starts, because that takes a long time to look at these essays and webs. So you will come on the day of the fair to interview the students, but your judging takes place prior to the fair. If you are doing essay and website judging, you will receive those about a week and a half or 2 weeks prior to the fair, and then do your evaluations, your ranking prior to that fair. For the rest of you, you're judging on the day of the fair. Students are going to bring their projects. You're going to see what they have on that day. The other 3 formats are displays, and that's where students use poster boards to tell an historical story through limited text and pictures and graphs. It's like a museum exhibit. There's also media. That's very popular with students. In the days when we first started History Day, media was slideshows. These days it is very slick DVD productions, and students really enjoy communicating in that manner. So we have what's called documentary, which is basically DVD presentations. Those are 10 minutes, so 10-minute max of a documentary presentation. The final format for the very brave students is performance, where they convey an historical story and argument through a live performance. That is also a 10-minute presentation. So those are the 5 formats. You will be judging in one of those formats, and you're going to be judging one of 3 divisions. It's very important to understand what these divisions are, what the age of these students are.
so that you understand how young they are, that you're looking at the work of very young people in some cases. Some of you, in a few districts, we have what's called the youth division, where they're having students in 4th and 5th grade already doing primary material, presenting, sometimes even doing live performance in front of people. So 4th and 5th graders are the youth division. Not every district does youth division, but those that do, it is a great treat to work with these young students. Then there's junior division. That's 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Junior division will be in all districts. And then finally, senior division. That's 9th through 12th grade. So be aware as you get your judge assignments, the ages that you're looking at. For many of you, like the displays and the essays, you don't meet the students until you've done your judging. So it's important to keep in mind the age, the youth of these students, and to couch everything that you convey to them in very, very gentle terms, very constructive and helpful terms.
All right, so obviously some of that is not applicable because we're not meeting anywhere live, but I wanted to make sure everybody was clear on the categories and the divisions, so we showed that. What I want to turn to now, and we'll go back to the slideshow presentation, is to talk very briefly about the theme for this year. Every year, National History Day chooses a really broad theme to which the students need to connect their topics, their projects. It's broad on purpose to encompass pretty much anything students might be interested in. Sometimes students get to choose their topics on their own. Other times teachers really direct them to a set number of topics related to their class. But you're gonna see a range of topics related to this theme. And this year the theme is communication in history, the key to understanding. So it's absolutely great if they come up with unconventional ways of approaching this theme. Sometimes they're pretty basic, like the telephone, right, or the internet, the kind of standard ones you'd expect, but you might also get some really out of the box ways of thinking about communication, and that's fantastic. All they have to do is make clear to you in their project how they're connecting to that theme. So it's one of the things you're evaluating. Now, one of the things that Hawaii Council for the Humanities does every year with our various themes is we find a figure in Hawaiian history or a cultural aspect of Hawaii that connects to the theme, and that becomes our symbol, symbolizing the theme for that year. This year, we are honoring Mary Kawena Pukui as our local role model of the importance of communication in history and as a key to understanding. Dr. Tutu Pukui's work was centered around preserving the Hawaiian culture in so many ways, including language, writing dictionaries, hula, recording and preserving teachings and practices, mele, translating, publishing, and writing, composing songs, her work in museum studies. She was a pillar of the Bishop Museum, preserving legal histories and ongoing struggles, translating important documents, for example, and of course, teaching. Teaching from the youth to PhDs. In terms of her communication efforts, we also honor her close relationship with her grandmother and other elders. She helps us remember that our ancestors and the generations before us connect us to our histories and who we are. We thank her for building the bridge for generations of Hawaiians and non-Hawaiians to learn more about and live the beauty and richness of the Hawaiian culture. So we will be honoring her throughout the process at the different district fair announcements and at the state fair as well. So symbolizing our theme, which is communication in history. All right, we'll go to the next slide. And now let's talk a little bit more about virtual fair logistics. Normally, when we do the face-to-face non-pandemic History Day fairs, we would do them, on a Saturday, usually running maybe 2 fairs at a time, like, Central and Kauai. Judges would show up, students would show up, and they would do the judging on that day. And then the next Saturday, we do 1 or 2 more over a 4-week period. What we're doing with the virtual fairs is we are running all 8 districts at the same time. About a 15-day period that judges are going to have to look at their projects for all of the fairs at the same time. Now, what that means is you are only judging, each of you, 1 fair. You are not looking at stuff from Windward and Central and a couple Maui projects. You are looking only for the fair that you have signed up for and your judge coordinator has talked to you about. But we're running them parallel. And we're giving these long stretches of time for judges to do their job of viewing the projects, giving comments, etc. Each of the fairs has a coordinator. So there's one point person that's running each of the fairs. That's who's been communicating with you, whether, you know, Ryan, Malia, Mieko, the various coordinators, depending on the fair that you are judging for. So they're your point person. They're doing all of the logistical work of assigning, and they're who you go to if you have questions or you need help and consultation doing your job. We have not finalized actual assignments within each of these fairs because we're still getting registrations coming in. We're still waiting to get the final solid numbers of how many projects in each category and each division. Probably at least a couple days before the judging actually starts, you will find out what you are assigned to, which division and which category. Everything in terms of this virtual fair will be done on the National History Day portal, which we'll talk more about later. That's the platform on which the projects are posted, on which you post your judge comments. That's the way we interact in this virtual History Day year. Okay, the timeline, let's just go through that really quickly. Basically, we've got staggered start and end dates, depending on the different categories people are judging. So for those of you that are going to be doing essays and webs, you will be told by your judge coordinator, you know, the gates are open, the projects are posted, start judging February 17th. You will have until March 3rd, which is 15 days, to do your judging, to do your comments. You've got lots and lots of time. It is not the Saturday morning 2-hour scramble, right? You've got lots of time to do your judging. For exhibits and those doing Olelo Hawaii projects, that will start February 18th. You have until March 4th. And then documentaries and performances start February 19th. You'll have until March 5th. So we've got the staggered judging periods. The runoffs, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. Runoffs will take place after this initial judging. That will take place from March 8th to 11th. So those who are doing runoff judging, that's when you will do the runoff judging. And then the special prize nominations, which I'll talk about in a second. Your deadline for that is after you've finished all your judging, then you can think about if you want to nominate for any special prizes. That deadline is March 11th. Okay, so that's those deadlines. This is, oh yeah, you can go back to that, Shannon. This calendar is posted on that judge resource page. So if you forget this, it's not written down. If you're a visual person, you can look at this calendar to keep track of your deadlines, okay? All right, next page. So what are you doing as a judge? You're doing a number of things, part of your judge duties. First and foremost, you are viewing the projects. They are all going to be posted up on that portal. When you log in with your name, then all your projects will be listed there. You go into each one, you know, the performance is posted up, taped, or a website or an essay, and you're viewing all of the projects that you have been assigned. You are filling out judge forms. This is a crucial part of what you're doing. This is your teaching part of your job. You are giving feedback to the students and the teachers through both the use of a rubric, which we'll look at in a moment, and comments. So part of what you're doing in that 15-day period is filling out the judge sheets for each of the projects and putting real time and effort into that. But you're also doing the judging. So after you've looked at the projects the first go around, and maybe even before you begin writing your comments, you should be communicating with your judge partner. The judge teams are 2, some of them are 3, but minimum of 2, and you need to do the ranking. You need to determine which are the best projects of the ones that you are looking at. We absolutely strongly ask that you talk to your fellow judges, that you don't just email and say, these are my top 3, and then leave it at that. We would like you to recreate, to the extent possible, the interaction that happens when you're judging in person, because different judges see different things. And what you might have missed the first go around and looking at it, or you didn't really weigh it that heavily, but you talk to the judge, your judge partner, and they've got a different perspective. You both do better judging, or all 3 do better judging if you communicate, talk it out, hash it out, if you have different opinions. So you can confer either through, on the portal, there's like a little video conferencing tool you can click into, or probably what most people will do is you can just set up your own Zoom meeting, yeah, between your 2 or 3 judges. Set up a Zoom meeting. If you need help with that, you can let us know, but I think everybody here has been teaching on Zoom, or just a phone call. But please talk to each other as you're coming to your ranking decisions, and if you have already done your judge comments, you might want to go back and revisit those after you've talked to your judges and maybe see things a little differently. So after you've talked to them, you need to come to your decision on the best projects. Some of you are choosing for runoffs, which means there's simply too many projects for one judge team to look at in that category, you know, like 12 websites. So we split it into 2 teams, and those teams will choose the top 2 or 3 to go into a runoff, and then another team will pick the best out of that lot. Your judge coordinator will let you know if you're picking runoffs or the final decision. So you're either doing runoffs, 2 or 3, and you'll be told how many to pick, or you're it. Your team is looking at all of the projects in that category and division, and you are picking the top 3 that go on to state. Not 1, 2, 3, you don't have to rank them, but just the best 3 that will go on to state. So you're doing, this is your judging job, is picking the best projects. The other job we're asking of you is to identify those projects that are worthy of being nominated for a special prize, which we'll talk about in a second. So that's another job that you do after you've done the comment sheets and the ranking. Then you try and pick out the really stellar works that are worthy of a special prize. Sadly, the one thing you're not doing is interviews, right? I know we're all, so there's a little sad face, we're all very sad. You don't get to talk to the students one-on-one because of the situation we're in. We had actually planned on trying to do interviews. It was really important to a lot of us that we figure out a way to do interviews, and HCH was ready to do this incredible amount of effort of, you know, creating Zoom rooms and schedules, etc. But National History Day has basically told the country, every state, all History Day fairs, no interviews. One issue is equity. Can all students, you know, get to Zoom, etc. A bigger issue is privacy and the fact that these are minors. And the legal repercussions, National History Day just said no interviews this year. So what that means is that the only way students are going to hear from you is in your comments. So again, please make sure you give them very lengthy, very detailed, and personable comments, because this is the way that you are communicating with them. This is the only way they're hearing that judge voice. Okay, so those are your judging duties. Let's talk a little bit further about Special Community Awards. We are very fortunate in Hawaii to have so many community organizations that support what we're doing with students and the learning that's taking place, especially the work of the teachers in helping these students. So they give prizes related to, you know, topics, you know, best project in Chinese history or maritime history, or prizes about skills, best use of primary sources or use of newspapers. We've got 17 special prizes that will be awarded at the state contest. So what we're asking is that folks at the division or the district level, that you nominate those you think should be in the running that will be determined by the time we get to the state contest. So we're not giving these out at the district level, but we're getting the nominations at the district level. Please only nominate those that are going to go on. So the ones that you're pushing forward for state, or the ones that are going on into the runoff. The nominations, again, the deadline is March 11th. We'll go to the next slide. It's very easy to do in the portal. The 17 different nominations have all been input into the portal. So you'll just go to that, do a drop-down box, and then pick the project that you think is worthy of that nomination. You'll get a separate list so you can look at all of them at one time and what the categories are, but this is how you will input into the portal. And if none of them are worthy of nomination, then don't nominate. You're not obliged to. But this is a way we can kind of share the glory and the sense of accomplishment of our students, even if the project didn't go on to, you know, nationals, but it just did some amazing, you know, work with newspapers. They can get that acknowledgement and prizes that range from, you know, books to money to even some scholarships for the big prizes. So, that's the special prize. I'm going to talk about the judging criteria. Now, we're going to start by watching another clip from a video because this goes over what's still the same, historical evaluation and quality of projects. And then when we come back, we'll talk about some of the changes from past fairs in the new judge sheet. So we'll go to the taped me talking for about 7 minutes or so, and then come back and talk.
I'm now going to begin to talk to you about the criteria. I've talked to you about the need to evaluate and rank and giving feedback, but let's be clear about what you're actually looking for and where you can give valuable feedback to the students. For each of the projects that you're going to get, there is a judge sheet. And this judge sheet, as I'll talk about a little bit later, this is where you put your written comments. But it is very useful because it gives you the criteria listed here. And the criteria, the kinds of things that you're looking for, that you're giving commentary on, are ranked kind of in this order. First and foremost, you're looking at the history. And this may seem simple and obvious, but it's very important to remember and not be dazzled by quality of the performance, but you continue to look and prioritize looking for the historical work that they've done. Students are expected to have done primary and secondary research for their History Day project. Primary, minimum of 2 sources. Obviously, a better project has many more than that. But the first thing you're looking at is research. Bibliography is part of every project. It is a part of your judging, and it's absolutely something where you can give useful feedback on. Did they do sufficient research? Did they do something more than Wiki Commons, Ask Yahoo, and maybe an encyclopedia entry? We want more substantive research. And in this day with the internet, we have much higher expectations than we did in 1991 of the kind of research students can be doing. They need to be doing secondary research, scholarly articles, etc., and hopefully books, right? Chapters out of books, but they certainly need to be doing primary research. That's where you can give very useful feedback. Often they don't know where to look. This whole thing is a learning process for them. One of the things they can learn is, what I often find myself saying is, did you think about looking at newspapers at the time, right, to get a sense of how people felt? So, suggesting newspapers or diaries or autobiography that you know about. Give them an idea of how they might have fleshed out or strengthened their primary sources. If they have really good research, that's a very strong asset as you're doing the evaluation and ranking. So research comes first. Then when they're analyzing it, secondly, of course, they have to provide analysis. And this is the huge jump for a lot of students, is going beyond just saying this happened and this happened and this happened, and actually analyzing it, coming to conclusions, talking about why, talking about effects, providing a thesis statement and supporting that. It is not a jump that all students can make, and that's fine, because again, we don't expect them to all be expert in history. They're here to learn about history. Narration is actually a skill that's difficult to master, and if they've done that, that's terrific. They've told the story well. They've told it accurately. If they do that, then give them good feedback, that they told a good story, that they showed their understanding of the story. But the truly stellar work and where you can help them make that leap is to understand history is not just saying what happened. It's talking about whys and so whats, about consequences. So what you're looking for in the really good projects is that there is analysis taking place, that they're thinking and coming to conclusions and supporting that conclusion. So you're looking for research and you're looking for analysis of that research. Other of the criteria, right, in terms of historical work, you're looking for balance. This is tough, especially for younger kids, especially on really difficult topics, as they can get really emotional. They can take a side. It becomes a manifesto and a statement of, opinions instead of a more balanced approach. Balance doesn't mean that they agree with both sides, but they have to at least acknowledge the other side. It's not like all good guys, all bad guys, everything was great, everything was horrible. They have to show an understanding of balance in history. And again, that's an intellectual leap for them, and you're helping them to make that. And if they don't quite get that, then you gently explain to them, well, you only talked about one side of this issue. You needed to at least acknowledge maybe what the other side was, or some of the negative aspects of this largely positive consequence. So balance. Another big one is context, right? They have to center their story in where it's taking place. And this is a big problem nowadays because students research by Googling. So they'll Google Japanese internment camps. Goes right to stuff about Japanese internment camps, and they don't read anything broader, right? They're not browsing more extensive research or resources to understand the bigger picture, right? They just go right to the little specific point, and they don't get that bigger picture. Like it happened in World War II, right? The context of that was World War II, or the space race. If they don't talk about the Cold War, how can they really be talking about what led to and implications of the space race? They don't have a lot of time. They don't have a lot of words. So we don't expect them to do lengthy context, but they have to show their understanding of that background. This is the bigger picture. This is a piece of that picture. This is the context in which things took place. So that's an area where often students are quite weak. They just jump right into it. Just like they don't like to do introductions on essays, they don't like to do context. That's where you can help them understand that's necessary. Set the stage. So these are the kinds of things that you're looking for as you evaluate their history. And again, this list helps you keep in mind those criteria. Matt, the final thing you're looking at, the final 20% of your estimation, is quality, right? Is the clarity of presentation, and obviously that differs for format. In essays, it's effective writing, paragraph structure. In the websites, it's that there's a flow to the links, that you can follow the organization of that website, that the pictures aren't fuzzy and too small, just basically communication skills. In performance, it's obviously that they didn't forget their lines, or they didn't talk so fast you didn't hear them. The media, right, that it's not scruffy and gives you, motion sickness, that it's smooth. It's basically communication skills, which are important. But, and here's the key caveat, that is not the most important thing. This is where we're relying on your expertise as judges. We can have very slick media productions, beautiful emotional performances, but their bibliography is really weak. There's no clear thesis. They're just kind of telling a story. They're not analyzing it. That project should not go on. The project that's maybe a little scruffier, where the person forgot their lines and then picked it up, but their bibliography is 4 pages long with extensive primary sources where there's an intriguing thesis that they're presenting, the scruffier project should go. The stronger history should determine. And sometimes that's a very hard one to call, but that's why we depend on your expertise and your professionalism, because you do need to not be swayed by brilliant performances or slick media production, but look at the substance, look at the history. So these are your criteria. You'll have, again, a sheet for each of your projects to help you remember that as you're evaluating. But those are the criteria you look at.
All right, great. So let's continue to talk about criteria. One of the things that people who have judged before might have noticed is that we didn't talk about adherence to the theme as one of the key chapters that you look at. In the past, the judge sheet looked like, the National History Day judge sheet was 60% history, what I just talked about in that video, 20% adherence to the theme, and then 20% quality. That's how you're kind of supposed to weight it. But, and maybe Shannon, you can just go right to the sheet now. What History Day has done with his new judge sheet is merged history and adherence to the theme. So basically historical quality is now 80% of your weighting, your evaluation, how you weigh it, with adherence to the theme built into these various criteria. So that's one change. Adherence to the theme, making clear how it's connected to communication history is important, but that's all kind of melded into your evaluation of their historical work. Sorry, can you go back? We go back and forth in this. So that's one change. The other change is that there is a rubric, and this rubric we are asking judges to fill out. If you recall, again, those of you who judged in the past, what it used to look like, the judge sheet, is it had these different criteria, balance and context, and then it just had columns that said excellent, superior, good, etc. And nobody knew what that meant, right? So judges were all over the place. There was no norming. Projects that went on had lower ranking than projects that stayed. It was not clear enough, and it was not normed enough for us to ask judges to use those check boxes. So we said, don't check the boxes, just give written comments. That's changed. So we go back to that, go to the first one, Shannon. Yeah, if you look at that, we now have rubric language. Now we have the criteria very clearly indicated, so that when you say something is good or superior or fair, you are indicating the basis on which you are making that judgment. This is going to give much more useful feedback to teachers especially, but also to students. So we are asking you, check the boxes. Please do it. It's part of the judging, is to fill out this rubric, and again, give very, very concrete feedback to the teachers. So you're using this judge sheet now to give feedback through this rubric, but we also still want you to spend a lot of time on the comments. So do both. And you've got 15 days, right? So you can do both. The comments are still critical. The comments are where you can give very, very specific and concrete feedback. Shannon, can you go back to that earlier slide? This is something really where you should be spending most of your time is writing out these comments. As I said earlier, we don't get to do interviews. These students don't get to meet you. And for a lot of students, that's really an empowering part of this whole process. And again, this is just one of the many costs of pandemic life. But what you can do is give them lots and lots of concrete, specific, well-explained comments. Not a few bullet points or some terse little statements, but really spend time on these comments because that's the encouragement that they're going to get and the learning that's going to take place for them. A couple of things on the comments. Please make sure that you both commend them as well as pointing out, you know, areas that they need to improve. You've got to encourage them. Recognize this year, we do have fewer projects than in past years. This has been a difficult year for teachers and students in the DOE and the private schools, K through 12. We know that. There's a lot of teachers who said, this year I just cannot, or my students cannot. We have students that maybe intended to, but couldn't get the project done because of all the turmoil and inability to meet with teachers, et cetera. So those who have made it to the History Day fairs, they deserve a big pat on the head. They deserve to be commended. They deserve to be encouraged for what they did on that project that is a strength. And even in the weaker projects, you can find things to commend. You know, great use of pictures, really, you know, interesting topic choice. You're clearly passionate about this subject. In that judge's resource page, there is a link to suggested comments, kinds of things that you can say to students just even to get you thinking in this way. But try to find things that they did well and commend them on that. And then turn to the areas where they needed to improve. And when you get to the areas where they need to improve, please, please couch it as gently as possible. You know, these are even the oldest ones, you know, 11th, 12th graders, they're still young people. And getting criticism's not fun. Getting anonymous criticism is really not fun. So we don't want them to come out of this whole experience that they struggled to finish up in a pandemic year thinking, I just got hammered by somebody, I don't even know who that is. You know, we don't want to crush them. We don't want to scold them, you know, lecture at them in writing. We don't want to show off that we know more than they do. Right, you should have done all of this stuff. We all know you know more than they do. That's not the point. We want them to be guided and taken to the next step intellectually or to see how they might have improved, but done very, very gently and constructively. And I'm beating this into the ground, but it's a very important thing that we want to emphasize, especially this year, especially the students that have already dealt with unbelievable pressures and are still doing a History Day project. Let's make it a positive experience and a learning experience. So, so that's the judge sheet. You fill out the rubric and you do the comments. There's also these rules. So you do have to pay attention to the rules. The rules are all indicated there on that judge sheet. You can check them off. When you get told that your projects are ready to judge, your judge coordinator will kind of highlight the key rules in each of those categories as well. But just to look at them here, some of the most important rules to be paying attention to have to do with equity and fairness. And that has to do with word limits or time limits. Those are in many ways the most important rules to look at. Papers have 1,500 to 2,500 words, so minimum, maximum words. Websites, there should only be 1,200 of their words. They can use primary quotes in websites. And we're encouraging them to do that, and images and graphs and maps, but only 1,200 of their words. Exhibits should be even less. Exhibits, the displays, should only be 500 of their words. We don't want an essay slapped up on a board with a couple little images next to it. We want them to tell the story with pictures and quotes, primary quotes, and maps and things like that. So there are these word limits. The essays and the websites, the judge coordinators will do the word counts for you, just to make sure it's done and consistent across the board. And we'll let you know if any are over. The display boards, we do not expect you to sit there looking at that PDF or counting each word. but you should eyeball it, right? If you look at something and it looks like, man, that really looks like more than 500 of their words, let your judge coordinator know and we'll do the counting for you. So we get paid the big bucks, right, or not, to do the counting on display boards. So let us know if it just looks like it might be more. Performance and documentary, pretty straightforward, 10 minutes, right? And man, when it's virtual, you can do a time mark, right? Nobody has to pull out their watch. So 10-minute time limit. So keep an eye on those limits. Annotated bibliography is another very important requirement. So not just a bibliography, but annotation, where they talk about what they learned from it, where they show they're not just slapping a whole bunch of resources there, but they actually read it and analyzed it. So that's an important requirement. Shannon, you can go to the next one. And something that's new this year, every format is requiring a process paper. In the past, essays did not, now they do. The process paper is really important to understand. This is where students, it's required, they should check the box, they should have a process paper. This is where they reflect on their process of putting together this project. Now, History Day, National History Day has made this more concrete, because in the past, some of these process papers were like, you know, the process was like how they got to the library. My mom drove me, right? It was like, well, that's not very enlightening, but what they've done now is they have questions they have to address so that it's the intellectual process, right? So, you know, how did they conduct the research? How did they come up with their thesis? And they're supposed to answer these questions. You can read the process paper. You have to show that, tick off the box that they've got it. But the process paper should not be used in your judging, right? And this is really important. The process paper is a teaching tool. This is how the teachers are having the students reflect and learn on what they went through. Some teachers use this as evidence of meeting the standards even. It's a teaching tool that you can read, and it can help you better understand what the student was trying to do, but the process paper cannot supplement the project. The project stands alone. So if you've got a display board and you're looking at it and you don't know what that thesis was, you know, it's an interesting story, but I don't see the thesis. And then you read the process paper and there's this amazing thesis. You cannot supplement what you viewed. What you could say in your comments is, you had a really great thesis. You might have made that clearer in your display by emphasizing this point, etc. So read the process paper to better understand the students, and you can draw attention to some of the key aspects, but please don't have it affect your ranking. That's a really important thing to keep in mind. All right, final point about rules. Go to the next slide. You know, how does it affect your ranking? Well, for violations, right? Things like they're missing their annotation, it's just a bibliography, or they went a minute over on their performance. That's where you as the judges, on those kinds of violations, you decide how much does that affect your ranking. But do not, for any of these kinds of violations, do not throw the project out of the running, right? You don't say, they're not even, they're not in the running to go to states. The only reason we disqualify or you just eject the project from your ranking is plagiarism. You know, just flat out major problems in terms of plagiarism. So everything else is a value judgment or an estimation. And that's where you as judges have to talk. Okay, they went, 10 seconds over or 10 words over on their website. I don't think that's egregious enough to kick them out of the ranking. I still think they should go on to state. It's a very strong project, but we should warn them to fix that for state. That's what you can decide as judges. 2 minutes over the performance, you can say that's way too much time. That gives them an unfair advantage. I don't think we can move them on to state because they just simply are it's too big a violation. That's what you guys decide as judges, and absolutely bring the judge coordinator into those conversations to help you address those, that kind of weighing of how big a problem this is, the violation. But do not disqualify. I've had that in the past where judges are like, well, we didn't even consider them because they were 50 words over. It's like, no. Only for plagiarism do you make that determination. Okay. I'm going to turn to the last topic, which is using the judge portal. Again, this is the platform on which everything will take place, where the projects are posted, where you submit judge sheets and special prizes. You do need to register before the fair, so before you start judging on the 17th, 18th, or 19th, and then the projects aren't going to show up until right when it's time for you to judge. But we have another video that goes over this process. We're going to play to see if there's questions, And this is also on your judge resource page if you miss it or if you want to watch it over and over and over. But we'll turn to that video now.
Welcome to registering as a Hawaii History Day judge and judging evaluations. This short video will show you step by step how to register and evaluate your History Day projects. Use the link that was sent to you and scroll down till you get to Hawaii. Choose the district fair that you will be judging at. When the window opens, look for Judge Main. You'll be creating a new account. Go ahead, fill out the information, and press Create Account. A window opens, and again, you need to register as a judge. At this point, fill in all the blanks and press Save and Continue. Two more windows will appear, one asking for your preferences, and the next one permission and waivers. Click on what is required and press Continue. At this point, you are done. Write down your username and password and wait for instructions from your consultant. Your historical consultant will contact you and let you know when your portal is ready for judging. Log in again, except this time you will log in at the top using your username and password. Once you are in, look for the word Judging and go to Judge Portal. You and your teammates' emails and phone numbers will be listed at the top. A little box at the top will be the video conference link that you will use when meeting with your team. Click on the View and Evaluate button to view and evaluate each project. The project link will be located in the upper left-hand corner. Then you need to click on each of the bubbles that best represent the criteria achieved. Select the Rules Compliance. Fill out the Comments section. Students will see strengths and areas for improvement and your general comments. Your personal notes are only seen by you and your teammates. You need to put a minimum of 300 characters, letters and spaces in each box. No maximum is required. Use the Save button to save your work. Press Save and Submit when the evaluation is completed. Once you press Save and Submit, your team members will be able to see what you have written. You can always go back and make changes, especially after your team has met together. Once you have created a username and password for one fair, you can use the same username and password to judge in multiple fairs. Start by logging into your portal. At the top, select External Portal from the drop-down menu. The fair you originally registered will show. Below you can see the Add button. Click on Add, then scroll down till you see the other fairs you will be judging in. Click Request to Judge. The link will turn yellow. You are done. You will need to wait for instructions from your historical consultant. The team captain has added responsibilities. He needs to set up the team meeting, submit the ranking of all projects, press the Submit to NHD when your teammates have completely finished all of their evaluations. You have locked in the project rankings and chosen the special awards. This button will completely lock down your room, and teammates will not be able to go back and make any corrections. If this was done accidentally, please contact your historical consultant. Mahalo nui loa for your help and support. Although we cannot meet with students this year, your role plays a very important part in the success of the Hawaii History Day program.
All right, so there were some questions I think we addressed in the comment box, and we can come back to that, but there was just one final thing I wanted to mention. As folks who have judged before know, you need to, or we ask you to fill out a judge cost share survey. This was always that goldenrod sheet. This is where you indicate, when you're all done with everything, you've done the nominations, the ranking, etc., how much time did you give to being a judge? And that includes the orientation you just attended. This helps HCH when they go for grant money to show the value in time and commitment and volunteering that judges did. So we'll remind you, the judge coordinators will remind you to fill this out, but I'm just giving you a heads up that we'll ask you to fill this out when you're done. These are the different judge coordinators. Again, you should be aware of who your coordinator is for the fair you're working, but get in touch with them. But any questions as we go along with the fair once the judging starts. And here is the contact for Hawaii Council for the Humanities, who of course know everything, right, and can help you answer as well. So we'll leave it there. Oh, I finally made it 1 hour. First time I've done it in all my rotations. And we'll leave it open now for questions. You can leave if you would like at this point, but you can unmute and ask a question or put it in the chat.